Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I'm excited to have Dinuka McKenzie joining me. Hi Dinuka.
Hi, Jackie. So lovely to be here. This is so cool.
And some people might remember Dinuka's been our author for the day before, so great to have her back again. You were
Yes,
only like a few days ago, really, wasn't it?
it was only a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? Yeah, it was
Mm.
something very close. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So just a little bit about Dinuka. So Dinuka's an Australian writer. Her debut crime fiction manuscript, The Torrent, won the 2020 Banjo Prize for fiction and was published by HarperCollins in February 2022. And it says unpublished manuscript. Well,
It's been unpublished.
yeah, was longlisted for the 2020 Ritual Prize and was published in 2023. So it's only just, when did Taken get out to public? When was it available for
Yes,
purchase?
it basically just
Funny.
came out on the 1st of Feb, so
First of
very new.
Feb,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So very, very new. When not writing, she works in the environmental sector and volunteers as part of the team behind the Writers Unleashed Festival. And she lives in southern Sydney with her husband, two kids, and their pet chicken. So welcome, Dinuka.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And I just want to say I am coming to you today from beautiful Darwin country, as you said, from South Sydney. And I do want to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Both these books were both, conceived and written on this land. So I very much want to pay my respects and also extend that respect to all First Nations viewers from, wherever we're joining this online session from today. So it's so lovely to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I can see your books there in the background and just wanted to share my book here. Just wanted to say I've just finished reading it and really loved it. I actually read both of your books, like just about one after the other, and yeah, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's good to. I know that some people have read it sort of taken first and then gone
Mm,
back to the torrent,
mm.
and some people have read it, like in order. But hopefully it kind of hits either way. Like whichever way you read it, hopefully it kind of hits. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
And I loved Kate Mills. Or Kate Miles, sorry. Do you want to tell us a bit about Kate and about Taken?
Yes, absolutely. So as you said, Jackie, so Taken is basically the follow-up to my debut, The Torrent. And they're both basically kind of police procedurals, and they're set in the Northern Rivers region of New South Wales in Australia. And they are definitely standalone mysteries. So as we were talking about, you can definitely come to it at any point. But so in The Torrent, you basically have Detective Kate Miles. She was very heavily pregnant at the time, and she was in her last week of work before going on maternity leave, and she kind of looks into a case involving a death in floodwaters. And in Taken, we pick up Kate's story about, I think it's 4 months after the events of the torrent, and she is back from maternity leave. She is dealing with the pressures of a second child and kind of having to prove herself back in the workforce. And she's dealing with the kind of the mental health kind of fallout from what happened in the torrent as well. So she's got a few things going on. And in the midst of all of this, she kind of gets basically handed the biggest case of her career to date, which is the case of a young infant going missing, apparently abducted from her home. And it is Kate's job to bring baby Sienna home, and yeah, the story kind of goes from there.
Yeah, yeah. And do you want to tell us like what gave you the first idea?
Well, the first idea, I mean, I think for Taken, because I had written The Torrent, I really felt like I knew what Kate's kind of mindset was. Like I really felt I knew where she was mentally. And to me, mentally, she was, quite in a quite vulnerable place, because she obviously had hang-ups around the way her second bub came into the world. And so, her vulnerabilities really stem from that, and her kind of her emotional state stems from that. So being the awful kind of writer that I am, I thought, what would push Kate the most? Well, I guess she's got vulnerabilities around kids, so maybe a case around kids. So yeah, so I mean, it felt like a obvious kind of place to go with her, and it was also, for her, the motivation to bring that child back given what she had gone through and given that, basically her child is the same age as the bub that goes missing. So for her, it feels incredibly personal. I think there's a scene very early in the piece where she's kind of walking into that family's house and the bub's disappeared and the scene of crime officers are there, and she kind of thinks, what if these scene of crime officers are in my house? So she very much takes it quite personally in terms of, what if this was me? So that felt very organic in terms of I knew exactly where she would be mentally and where she, how to push her. And the other thing is in terms of, I guess, writing in general, what really interests me is taking really ordinary situations and kind of looking at the darkness that lies underneath and in plain sight. And so in that sense, I'm really interested in kind of looking at, just really everyday situations. So in this case, I guess the seed of the idea was very much school pickup. And I'm going to leave it there because otherwise it'll be a spoiler. But that was the seed of the idea, and the idea kind of went from there.
And when you started writing The Torrent, did you write it with the hope or the intention that there would be follow-ons from it?
Yeah, look, I mean, not at the very start, because my writing kind of, the way I got into writing was a very kind of, it certainly wasn't because I had an ambition to write. It was very much a very personal kind of reason that I had, I had kids and I was kind of managing my own kind of work life and family life. And I really felt, that situation where you feel like bits of you are disappearing. And so, writing for me was very much a way of kind of clawing back bits of myself and kind of finding a place for myself. So when I was putting that very first draft together, certainly, one, I had no idea how to write full stop. And second, the fact that the detective came onto the page was, I think, largely due to my own love of crime fiction rather than me actually thinking about it and going, well, I think I'll write a detective fiction. Because actually it's like the hardest possible thing to do because you've got to do all the research and get all the procedural stuff as right as you can. So it was probably like, if I actually thought about it, I probably would have chosen something else to write about. But, so it was very instinctive and But then once I had written The Torrent, the idea for Taken or for a follow-on came very quickly. Like it was very quick, and I felt like I really felt like I had more to say about her relationship with her dad in particular. I love those two characters, like their interactions. I just really love Kate's relationship with her dad. It was one of the most, my most favorite to write, and I knew there was more to say in that. So I really enjoyed kind of being able to delve into that a bit more in Taken.
And we've got quite a few people watching, so just wanted to say to the people watching, if you've got any questions for Dinuka, please type them in comments and I can read them out. I've got some questions. Kelly says she loved the Torrent twists and she wonders if you know the twists before you start.
Yes, well, yes, I think so. I mean, basically until 2 days ago, I would have said, yes, I absolutely need to know the twist and absolutely need to know the perpetrator before I go in. And certainly for both Taken and The Torrent, I knew that the major twist, I needed to know the major twist that I'm working towards. And I kind of knew the perpetrator before I started. I didn't know anything else to detail. Turns out I'm writing the third one, and it's the very first time this has ever happened to me, so it is all brand new. But turns out the murderer who I had in mind wasn't the murderer. So this is brand new territory for me, where I was working towards something that I thought I knew the perpetrator, and it turns out in the very last few moments, it turns out it wasn't. And it has shocked me to the core because that's not how I write. So, yes, so a bit of both, I guess.
Yeah. And Sharon says she also loved The Torrent and she can't wait to read Taken. She wonders if you did a lot of research for Taken.
Yeah, I think I really leaned into the police procedural side of Taken a bit more. So I think I had to do a bit more research on that. There's kind of stuff around phone tech, and there's definitely stuff around kind of forensics, which I really had to delve into. I was very lucky because my sister-in-law, she works for kind of New South Wales Health. And she got me a contact with forensics, like a forensics person who used to work for New South Wales Health. He's since moved on to a different forensic team, but he's still in forensics, so the same kind of he still could answer my questions. So so he was an amazing contact to have, and I could kind of ask him some quite detailed questions, and he was like totally fine to give me some, to kind of answer my questions. And of course, I have my kind of police procedural advisors who kind of advise me on the police side of things. So yeah, so I would say I definitely researched for the torrent. I think I leaned way more into that side of things in Taken.
Yeah. And like in your second book now, and quite new to the whole publishing and promoting your books and everything, is there anything that has surprised you about the whole process?
Well, I think, like there's been some surprises in the sense that, like, I don't know, in my head, like you're just kind of writing this thing, but I honestly didn't expect kind of this reaction that I've got, and sort of how much people have just really kind of resonated with Kate in particular as a character. It didn't, when you're writing stuff, you don't actually realize those things. You're kind of writing what feels true to you, and then suddenly kind of the reaction is quite visceral. And so I've been quite humbled by that, to be honest. And as I said, I'm a huge fan of crime fiction, and so like I know, for years I have kind of read series books and loved going back to these worlds that authors have created, and kind of going back and there's a sequel, and I go back into that world. And now to be able to do that for readers, I mean, that kind of feels quite like a sort of like magic, basically, because you just go, oh no, but that's like what that's what I look up to authors for. So yeah, no, it's quite cool. Like that's something I didn't really expect to kind of be on that side.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've had lots of readers reach out to you. Is there anything that you can share with us that maybe a reader's told you that has maybe surprised you or really touched you? Or
yeah, one lovely reader. It was actually quite kind of early on when the torrent came out, or maybe midway through. But I got a message saying she hadn't kind of read a book since she'd left school, and I believe. From memory, hopefully I'm getting these details right, but from memory, she's a mum now, and this was the first book she had picked up, and she said, this got me back into reading, and I went, wow, that's kind of pretty full on. So so that was an amazing message.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Belinda says she's read both your books and loved them. She wonders if there's another Kate story in the works, and she said she would also love to see a Luke story.
Ooh, well, you're in luck because that's literally what I'm writing. So, yes, so basically number 3 of Kate is being written at the moment. That's what I was talking about in terms of, this experience of finding out the perpetrator I had in my head was not actually the perpetrator, which blew my mind a little bit when I was writing. And this is very much this plot line very much involves Luke. So yes, so her relationship with Luke very much comes into this book. So yeah.
No, that sounds great. And is it something we could see lots more books, can you see, or what do you see the future?
I think, okay, like with series books, I think you got to write it while if you're still enjoying it. You know what I mean? I think that's the key, because like I know there have been some very long series that I think, like I think there is a natural end to series, and I think you can go beyond that, and it just kind of feels a bit like churning it out. So I just want to, like, I'm just enjoying it so much at the moment that I don't want to kind of commit to anything or not commit to anything, if you know what I mean. Because in the end, I got into it because I enjoy it, and I certainly don't want to lose the kind of the joy in being in that world. So
Mm.
at the moment, I'm very much enjoying being in this third Kate book. So yes.
Mm. And when writing a series, is there anything that you do to keep things fresh for both yourself and your readers?
Ooh, oh, that's interesting. I mean, what I will say is I think you kind of set up, I guess it's got to be internally consistent with the
Mm.
rules you have set up for your kind of universe, if you will. So, in terms of the relationships you've set up, in terms of the setting you've set up, I think there has to be some internal continuity and internal kind of consistency. Otherwise, the readers will go, "Oh, hang on, but that didn't kind of match up to what was happening in there." So, yeah, so I think you have to do that, but also I think you have to find a new angle for your characters, because the point of a series is that readers can come into it at any point
Mm.
and still find the character compelling. So if they only find the character compelling because they read the previous book and they're attached to the character, then it's quite, I don't think it's working. It still has to, as a standalone book, that character has to be compelling enough for a person to read the book.
Mm.
But at the same time, if you are a series reader, you will get the little little connections, which kind of make that reading experience a bit more richer for you. So, so I think, it's got to work for all readers. It
Yeah.
still has to stand on itself as a standalone book. I think in the end, yeah.
And I can see in the background you've got like your books are there, but I can see there's also lots of other books. What do you like reading yourself, and is there something you might have read lately you want to recommend to us?
Yeah, well, you can see this is like this massive
Mm.
crime fiction shelf. So, I mean, definitely, I very much love reading crime fiction. So, some of the more recent ones I've read is Catherine Kovacic's Seven Sisters, which is
Yeah, yeah,
incredible.
that's a good
I
one.
just enjoyed that so much, just as a
Mm.
thriller, but also just how she delved into the kind of the moral ambiguities of those
Mm.
women's situations. So I love that. And Dark Mode, I mean, I think that's just taking off like crazy. Ashley Collegian Blind, that's been, a brilliant read. I got to read that as an advanced reader copy, and it just blew me away. And it's just, taking over the world at the moment, which is fabulous. But another one I just read, actually not crime, but in Terms of Inheritance by Michelle Upton. I just literally
Yes, yeah. I recently read that and interviewed her. That's a
so
great
much
one.
fun.
Yeah.
I was
Mm.
actually, I was, because we've been watching a Netflix series, me and my husband, and I was like, no, I don't want to watch Netflix. I want to see what happens next.
Mm.
And that means it's a great book, because I
Yeah.
was just like, I couldn't kind of stop thinking about it, and I just kept going back to it. So, as you know, because I'm writing, so I don't have much time to read. So, but it was in my head, and I kept wanting to go back to it. So that was
Mm.
so much fun. I loved it. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. And I had the pleasure of meeting you in person last year at the Northern Beaches Readers Festival. Just wondering if you got anything else coming up that people can come and see you.
Oh, there's a few things definitely coming up. So some of the programs haven't been released yet, so it's very difficult
Mm.
to talk about, before the
Mm.
official program release. So
Mm.
it's very, so it's hard to talk about. But the one thing I definitely have coming up in the Easter holidays coming up. Yeah, there's Easter School Holidays is a library talk at Port Macquarie Library, which I'm really looking forward to. We're taking the kids and making a holiday
Nice.
out of it. So it's going to be
Yeah, it's a nice
can't wait
area
for that.
there.
So that's happening up. Oh my god, I should know the date. Oh, is it the 13th? God. So anyway, it's definitely on my website.
Mm.
Oh, that's bad. It's on my website. All my upcoming events are on the website. So but yeah, so that is one I can definitely talk about. But there's a few others definitely. If you follow me on any socials, and if you look up my website, that every time when it's out and can be released,
Yeah.
I take the website. Yeah.
All right. No, I'll be looking out for that. And could you tell us about how you actually got into writing? Is it something that, like growing up, you always thought you wanted to be a writer, or when did it come to you that that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, isn't it interesting? No, as I was saying before, sort of, it's not something I certainly creative writing and certainly being an
Mm,
author was
mm,
not something I ever kind of dreamt of. But in saying that, I would say that writing and particularly reading has been a massive part of my life. And writing in my professional life, I write a lot in my professional life and have written a lot in my professional life, but in a very kind of technical kind of report writing
mm,
kind of way. But in the same time, like whatever you're writing, you still have to get a message across. It still has to have a kind of beginning, middle, and an end in a very basic way. And you still have to. It still has to carry the reader, like. Because in a way, sometimes the most technical documents, to make that interesting and to make a person keep reading, like that's still, you have to get the person to the end of the story.
mm,
So I think it gave me, certainly that professional side of writing certainly gave me a discipline in terms of meeting deadlines, not being at all precious about taking feedback. In fact, I love getting feedback. I want feedback.
mm,
And just knowing that I can write big documents, if you know what I mean.
mm,
So in that sense, I think that gave me the discipline, but it never occurred to me, as I said, until I started writing. And then I was writing it, purely for myself. Because I guess, when I was trying to kind of regain a bit of identity, it felt like, well, I wasn't really good at sport or,
mm.
music or whatever, like reading, and then maybe I could write something, like it felt like of all the new things to take up, it felt like within the realms of possibility. So, that's kind of how it really happened. Yeah.
Mm, mm. And it sounds like you have a very busy life. Got family and got another job. How do you fit writing in? And do you have to schedule time in your diary to make sure you do something? Or
Yeah, well, look, I'm in a very fortunate and very lucky space at the moment that, to be honest, like I've stepped back quite a bit from my job. Like I still,
mm,
in theory, retain my sole trader license. But I obviously haven't done much contract work for a while, and I've stepped back from that position. So I'm very lucky in the sense that I basically write kind of pretty much full time.
mm,
So I write when the kids are at school because they're at school age now. So I have that kind of blocks of time. But I try and do everything kind of writing related in that period. So whether it be actually properly writing or whether it be preparing for an event or because you do workshops or preparing for that kind of stuff. And I try and kind of have all of that time for to do writing related
mm.
work, including the actual writing.
Yeah, yeah. And what do you hope readers will love about your books?
Look, I think based on the feedback and I guess in writing, I hope they see in Kate kind of a version of themselves or their sisters, mothers, best friends, kind of, all the kind of those strong, competent women in their lives who are juggling a million things, that to me is kind of, I guess, how Kate stands out in the sense that she feels like a reflection of an everyday woman who's wearing a million hats. She's a daughter, she's a police officer, she's a mother, husband, and she's wearing the obligations of all those hats, and she's trying to manage the expectations of all those hats. And sometimes she feels very stretched, and she feels like sometimes she's not doing enough in those various roles. And that is just basically what I think every single woman
Yeah.
at some point in their life, if not at all points in their life. So in that sense, Kate feels very relatable to most readers, and I think that's something I think she is that version of strength in the front of the page, where normally in traditional detective fiction, certainly it's male, it tends to be male centric, and certainly tends to be single and childless, and if there are children, certainly they're back a page, they're very much not a front and center. So I think it gives that voice, and people, women see themselves and that world, and sees the reality of that kind of reflected on the page, which I think is refreshing for people. So yeah.
And from your own experiences, if you were talking to someone who was thinking about getting into writing, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think, certainly for me, what has really helped is to just be genuinely interested and kind of involved in the writing community, because I think, my experience certainly has been like the writing community is so incredibly welcoming and generous and have been so supportive. And I think, being part of it allows you to kind of get to know the other writers who are writing in your genre. You get to know kind of the industry kind of contacts, and also kind of opportunities that are coming up. Because really, to me, like the Banjo Prize, Rochelle, all of that was basically because I was, inside the writing community, actively involved in it, and I knew when those opportunities came up. I've had numerous kind of mentoring opportunities, and that is purely because I got to know people in the writing industry, and I got to know opportunities that came up, and then I was able to apply for them. And I think if you're not part of it, those kind of opportunities, you don't even know that they're out there. And there's kind of mentoring groups, there's kind of writing groups, there's festivals you can attend, and many of these things are free, by the way. You don't necessarily have to spend money, but there's online things, even like this, where you can, and there's podcasts. There's so many podcasts, writing podcasts that you can listen to and just increase your skill level. So just to be immersed in the writing community, because the more you give to the writing community, I'm certainly kind of a reflection of the enormous generosity that has kind of lifted me up, and kind of cheered me on, which I'm incredibly grateful for.
Yeah, and that's something I've really noticed with like my involvement with authors, is just like how supportive they are of each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I honestly, and I think particularly for people who come from, like, say, other industries, like me, you come from kind of more traditional kind of 9 to 5 industries, and you come into the creative world, and you're like, wow, it's so incredibly supportive, and kind of everybody, lifts you up. So it's incredible. Yeah.
And Kim wonders if you have any interest in writing any other genres.
Ooh, interesting. Look, I have a number of few little ideas on the go. I haven't quite committed yet to kind of, I think, look, to be perfectly honest, I think if I was to sort of incorporate other genres, it will be like elements of it. So, it's likely that if I write maybe a suspense tale, maybe with an element of romance, but I'm not sure. I don't know if I have the confidence to write like a proper full romance, or maybe I will. I don't know. Maybe I'll reimagine myself as a romance writer. I don't know. But yeah, I would say I'm still very much. I love this kind of suspense. Like kind of what's the mystery, what's the twist, what's like, I love that. What's the secret? What's the, kind of send the readers looking that way when actually this is happening. I love that kind of part of writing. So I don't think I would ever write something that didn't have some element of that. I don't believe at this stage anyway. But I think I would like to experiment with other things. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for chatting with me. And I'm looking forward to reading more about Kate Miles.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. I've always, it's been so much, I've seen it happening, and I'm like, this is so good to be finally able to do this myself. Thank you so much. It was so lovely meeting you at the festival as well last year. I'm so glad we were able to do that.
Yeah, no, it was great. And thanks for the people who asked questions. We had some great questions. And thanks just for your involvement in the group. Hope to talk to you and have you involved again.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you. I'd love to be involved again. And that, thank you for everyone who, I know it's like 8:00 at night. And so thank you for turning up and, and being here today. It's so lovely. Thank you for all your questions.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.